our special guest, six-time Hall of Fame producer, Hall of Fame agency. Honestly, I wouldn't be an FFL if it wasn't for this person. The way I ended up here was I was at another company, and uh, the person that recruited me there didn't sell anything. And I called her in houses maybe 12 times, and she kept like giving me bad advice. And I was like, this really sucks because I was missing sales like left and right. So I went so I went online. There was these rumors about Sean Mike. I didn't know who that was, going to start this other thing. And they thought they were going to sell a bunch of insurance. So they said it was Family First Life. So I Googled Family First Life, and they had this training call vault. And so I got on this training call vault. And the first one I listened to, Jack was the guest speaker. And I learned more from Jack about how to close these sales than anybody at the company where I was. And I was like, this freaking, like, I literally went out the next day. I had like 9 appointments and I sold six of them. And those were the six that showed. I sold six in a row. And I was like, this is good. I got to go back and listen to this Jack guy. So I was listening to those calls over and over and over. I get on them every week because they didn't hide them. You could get on them. And a few months later, I decided to leave where I was and join FFL. But it wasn't just that impact. I mean, he's made such a strong impact on the company from the very beginning. He's the most selfless leader we got. He'll help anybody. He doesn't keep any secrets. He's always been a top producer. He's the hardest working agent I know, and we're really lucky to have him on the call because he's been able to transcend all aspects of the business. Like he's been a top annuity producer, he's been a top IUL producer, he's done it in the home, he's done it on the phone, he's built a huge team, he's got a ton of Hall of Fame producers himself. So really excited. Jack, thanks for jumping on. Thanks for being with us.
Hey, thanks, Trey. Thanks, Steven. What an intro. Okay, thanks. Bye. Enough said,
so
but thank
so I
you.
think the thing most people I don't well, you could probably share your story real quick, Jack, because there's probably some new folks out here that don't
Mm,
know, how it all started.
mm. Um, yeah, I started in insurance like 15 years ago, and I was just looking for a job. I had worked in other industries for many years, and when the last company I was at changed hands, I was out of a job. So I was trying to make use of myself back home. I was not helping the situation with my family's business, so I was like, I need to get out of here. Came out to California and was sleeping on my buddy's couch, trying to find a job. And I thought my resume looked good. I think I was the only one that thought so because I couldn't find a job. So his turns out his girlfriend was the top producer at a life insurance company, and I got my license, and I spent a year with these people, this other company, and met some really great people. But in the end, it just didn't pan out for me. So I ended up leaving the industry altogether, and chalked it up to experience. Of course, I was a bit frustrated. I was like, man, I was hoping for more, and moved on. A couple years later, I did have a job finally, but it really wasn't going to take me where I wanted to be. It was never going to go beyond six figures. It was, pretty stressful. The boss was a jerk, and I was getting ulcers from it. So I was like, I need to find something else. Uh, and again, I was back looking. I had my license already, and then I got back into insurance, and that's where I met most of y'all, right? And turnaround, fortunately for me, I was able to get with Family First Life, and that was a complete game changer, you know. And that's when things really started to click, started to make sales, and started to help families. And I think, that's all I could really ask for. The thing that really got my attention, of course, was like most people, was like, hey, we have leads. And I was like, yeah, that might work, you know, because if you look at the traditional approach to helping families, warm market, friends and family, I respect that. I still do that today, but as a long-term approach to helping families, I was like, nah, I need more people to talk to. I have two aunties and two uncles, and then what? Once they buy a policy, I'm done, you know. So
Right.
I thought, well, that might work, having leads, and that's what got my attention. But it's been really exciting throughout. Definitely, for me, I'm not the fastest one in the group, so it was an uphill battle trying to make sales. And I think that um, has me go back and reflect upon like all these years of selling. I'm actually very thankful you guys had me on, and every time I managed to talk about telesales. I just like, I started shining, because like, I'm not the telesales guy. I wasn't, if anything, I was the complete opposite. I had been in the field driving around, because that was our approach. We're like, hit the road or, that's it. That's the only option we had. And ironically, we didn't even start doing, introducing telesales till after the heat of COVID, so we literally get our leads, and a lot of people still do. And I think there's a lot of merit to it. Get on the phone a day or two to book a day or two in the field to go visit families toe to toe. And that's what we did. And I did that for over 12 years. And tough. I think initially, we had some challenges in the form of lead vendors. Leads were very sparse. The first leads I got, were basically second chance, third chance, old leads. But I tell you what, compared to the place we came from, they they were like a breath of fresh air. We couldn't get enough. you know. So back in those days, we only had really one or two types of direct mail leads, and you'd either have to wait for them to generate, or you'd have to, go run to other counties. So I think you and I both got used to driving far away, just to have enough leads to purport the kind of appointment schedule that we needed to have. So I got more and more comfortable with driving. So I'd go, further in LA. From LA, I started going to um, Orange County, San Diego County, Las Vegas, Central Valley, and beyond. I'd do 900 miles a week driving. And the first couple of years was, uh, really a challenge, physically a challenge, because the first thing that crossed my mind, I was scared. I was like, drive 3 hours to go do your appointments. I was nervous. I was like, man, what do I eat? First thing that came to my mind. What's to eat over there? Yes, they do eat regular food over there. Same thing we eat over here. And it still comes in the same bag in the same box. But that was literally the first thing on my mind. I was like, oh my God, what am I gonna eat? But slowly but surely, I made a business out of it. And once it started getting profitable, started helping families, that gave me the confidence that I needed to finally turn the thing around. And just started reeling up, going further and further. So I'd go as far as even Sacramento. It's like a 7, 8 hour drive one way. And I was able to collapse time frames and help more people in a shorter period of time. Where a road trip would normally be like 3, 4 days. I think my first road trips were like 3, 4 days long. But
So I think, one of the advantages Jack had when he transitioned to telesales was he understood the work ethic that was necessary.
mm,
I remember having this conversation about stamina
mm,
and how he built that up. You would do those Sacramento trips, you'd leave 4 a.m. and run your appointment at noon,
mm,
and run the rest of the day type thing. Uh, so he's putting in his GPS directly to the first house, 8 hours away, and then run the rest of that day and then the whole next day. So when it came to telesales and they were like, hey, you just need to get on the phone and one call closes, appointments, however you did it, you already have the work ethic to do it. So talk to us about the advantages of the pros of telesales and the cons of telesales, because you can definitely talk about both.
oh yeah, for sure. Um, I was a naysayer. Having done it one way for so many years, I was like, I don't even think you could do it that way. Telesales, tell you the truth. And my initial challenges were, you don't get the same opportunity to be in front of people, and get to know them, build a rapport, build that trust factor. Because let's face it, people buy things from people who they trust and like. That's always been the tried and true thought process. If you get them to like you and trust you, then they're more apt to listen to what you have to say and let you help them out. But on the telephone, um, the beauty of it is, you can bounce from one appointment to the next and not have to, if you get no show, which is, it's common, and you work to improve your show ratio. But if you get no show, you just move on to the next appointment, and you can have a whole host of appointments. I mean, for example, just in LA alone, you always overcompensate, knowing that you're going to have no shows and people that need to reschedule. But at best, I would set up, 10 appointments a day, every hour on the hour, anticipating, expecting to get no-show 3, 4, 5, 6 times on any given day, and then make it with traffic to like 4 or 5 appointments, and that'd already be a good day, you know. Whereas on the
Right.
telephone, you can just bam, 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 bam. I've got it, when I'm really ready to run, I've got it set so that, again, overcompensation, to make up for, to hit the numbers that you want. I'm literally setting appointments every 15 minutes on the hour, you know. And if I'm working the country, I can work people not just in LA, not just in Sacramento, not just in California. I can talk to people in Wisconsin, Indiana, anywhere, all over the country, and I can take advantage of the time zones. In fact, not even, not even through my own choice. Most of my appointments naturally fall in the early part of the day. So if I start at 8 o'clock, I've got appointments at 8:15, 8:15, of course, every quarter of the hour, 8:30, 8:45, and so forth, all throughout the day. And I could literally start at 6 if I wanted to, because people are up, you know.
Hmm.
So that's a big advantage. So that's the thing you really want to figure out is, how do you turn your disadvantages into advantages, you know? And it takes a little work. I think one of the things I wanted to share with everyone is having the right mindset. I think um, in everything you do, there's going to be learning curve, there's going to be obstacles, but the first thing you want to do is actually get your mind right. You know, I think that was a big part of why I had so many challenges to begin with. You know, I shared with you the other day, Trey, when I started. I don't think my mind was with it. My heart certainly wasn't. You know, I was a bit younger than I am today. I wasn't married yet. I just and the thought of life insurance. Yeah, it's a job. Everybody's gonna die. Everybody needs it, but I didn't really feel it. You know, and I think it's very important for us to try to find a way to conceptualize the real value of what we're doing. And there's a few ways you're going to experience that through your career, you know. And one thing that actually happened to me was, in time, you start helping people, and eventually people die, literally die, and that that was one of the big game-changing moments for me that helped, uh, you know, get my mind right as to what we're actually doing, right? Um, I had this one client, really sweet lady. She was a fortune teller of all things in Westwood. I don't know if you know, in California. It's a very densely populated area, and there's all these tall buildings all over the place. And then in the middle of all these tall buildings, you had her little shop. It was like the only little one-story building left in the entire 5 block radius, because everything else had been bought out, and turned into a high rise. And she was the holdout, and she'd had this little fortune telling. It's the oddest thing, you never imagine this place would be here. So I walk in, and she's like, What do you want?" I was like, "You're a fortune teller, you tell me." I just want to knock it around a little bit, and she thought that was funny. She's like, "Come here, sit down." And I actually sat in front of her in a crystal ball. I was like, "Oh my God, should I buy some more life insurance?" But she turned out, I mean, she was really abrasive initially, but she turned out to be a real nice lady. I helped her. And at the end of the appointment, I helped her husband. He kind of like came out of the back room out of nowhere. I was like, whoa, who's this guy? And it turned out we built a really, nice relationship. I ended up helping all her children and her friends and family. I did a whole bunch of warm market policies. And finally, they decided one day to sell. They sold. And I don't know how much that property was worth, gazillion dollars. And they moved out
Yeah.
to Palm Springs, you know. And we kept in touch all the way through. She's like, "I got this new house in Palm Springs. I can't believe it." And from time to time we text each other. And then one time she texted me, goes, "My husband died." And she was like crying, bawling, like I could, I didn't know what to do. I was like, I felt helpless. And she was like, telling me as she was crying, she's like, "I don't know how to pay the pay the mortgage. I don't know how to write a check. I don't know how to pay my credit card." None of this stuff. She ran the business and he ran all the finances. So she had no idea even how to write a check. She was so scared. And that's when I was like, it's time to really step up to the plate. I had death claims before, final expense, 10,000, 20,000, and you feel the call of duty. But this was like a pretty big size policy, and she was completely helpless. So I literally, as soon as I could, I got the thing rolling. I actually had the carrier expedite the check, and I drove out to Palm Springs. It was like 3.5, 4 hours. I drove out there and met her at the bank and helped her to pay her bills with this check. This multiple six-figure check. So that was like, I don't know, that was like something that was really earth-shattering for me. And I was like, well, what we do is really important. So how did I posture it in the beginning? You might not have had that experience yet, but that's one of the things that's definitely going to shape your business. I mean, I was a real realist. I'm a real, realist. I'm like, if it didn't happen to me, it doesn't affect me, you know, and I don't really see the value. That's why I was such a naysayer, you know. But in fact, I mean, let's be real. I mean, you're going to enjoy your job much better, and you're going to be much more effective if you like what you do. That's my opinion. And I'm one of those kind of people. If I like what I do, I'm really going to excel at it. And if I don't like what I do, mm, I'm going to be constantly challenged with the need to better time manage myself. So I had to sell myself on this whole thing. And that first whole year I was in life insurance, I couldn't wrap my head around it. I just couldn't wrap
Hmm.
my head around it. And I think that's what held me back. So, you know, once I joined Family First Life, I started seeing the impact that it had on the lives of so many different agents around the country. I jump on the webinars. To this day, I love to jump on these webinars and understand what people are going through. It's very transparent. We have calls every day. We have content coming out every day. You've got nurses and construction workers and teachers and, you know, people that are, in law enforcement, come from so many different backgrounds, but they have one thing in common. They're here. They never expected to be, and they're starting to, this is their thing. No plan B. Let's go help some families. And I had to sell myself on it. So I was like, hey, look, portfolio. Okay, I was a believer in portfolio. So the thing that floated my boat was like, okay, this is a integral part of everyone's of a prudent portfolio. You're gonna die. You know, everybody needs life insurance. Just like we need car insurance, just like we are forced by the government to have homeowners insurance. I mean, what about your family? So when I heard that, I was able to convince myself, psychologically that this is something valuable. But then once it actually started to hit home, and then unfortunately, I think like Andrew, he had experiences where people around him were passing away, not just clients, but people around him, and that actually happened to me. And I never talk about it, and I'm not going to continue. I'm going to continue not to talk about it. But someone very close to me in my life passed away in a big way, and I still have a hard time coming to terms with it. And I just, but now I've gotten to the point where I can tell you what it is. I just won't talk about the details. It just rips me up too badly. But then that happened to me, and I think getting your mind right is the key. You know, and
Amen.
mm,
Yeah, I think, and as far as telesales go, I mean, we had this conversation about, some of the big differences between in-home and telesales, and all the experience that you had. I recorded a role playing with you, and I was just blown away by, like you mentioned, people buy from people they like and trust, and I was just blown away by how quickly you could build trust on the phone.
mm,
Just walk us through some of those tidbits for the person
mm,
that's doing final expense on the
mm,
phone.
mm,
Um, what are things you do to build trust?
mm,
How do you build the value in the policy?
mm, mm.
How do you know who's really interested and who's not? What do you
Right.
do if four people show up at 8:15? That type of stuff.
Yeah. I think um that's always been the key. And I learned the hard way. You were telling me about your story where you took Sean to lunch. I had an opportunity to take Sean to lunch, and I had all these questions ready. And just, cut to the chase. I was like, hey, look, at this point, I was already finally helping people. I was doing like what we were supposed to do. Back then. It was like, oh, 20K. I was doing 20K a month helping families, but I was getting chargebacks. Like people would quit like 50%. And I didn't know why. And I straight up asked him, We had lunch. I was like, hey, I'm experiencing this. Why is it? He goes, it's because your rapport sucks. I was like, okay. Guy, didn't bother asking me anything about my business. What kind of appointments I'm running? What do I say? He just straight up looked at me and said, your report sucks. And I had a hard time swallowing that. And it literally took me a few months to digest it. At first my ego was hurt and I was like, well, how does he know? He didn't ask me a thing. But eventually it actually, and I started thinking, I was like, yeah, I think that's the key to a stronger, again, it's about people that trust and like you, right? Rapport is going to be key. So I actually started working on it in the home, and on the telephone, I had to find a way to mimic that. So I think the first couple of minutes is going to be very instrumental to, getting getting beyond that point of like, I'm here to, as a, as a function, to do something, you know, just to give you some numbers and run. So one thing I learned from Sean was really good. Pattern interrupts. Pattern interrupts. That's how I like to kick off my call. So I'm calling people in Southern California, Northern California, in Vegas, in Florida, and in Wyoming, and the first thing I say, it's just intentional. Normally I'd be like, "Hey Trey, this is Jack," very direct. But here I'm like, "Hey, I've got your details right here." I intentionally try to kick off every call and sound a little bit like, I don't know, like a radio announcer or like someone very interesting or very interested. I'm like, "Hey Trey, you're in Wyoming. How's the weather over there today?" It's just weird. And I do it intentionally just to break the ice. And they may or may not, just from that onset, I immediately, try to, not look like a telemarketer, and try to get into their lives quickly. And then, you'll literally have 50% of the people that'll answer you in a conversational like way. Like they want to have a conversation too. 50%. Only 50%, or you can look at it half full or half empty. Like, yeah, it's so cold here today. Oh my God, it's just been raining all morning, but it's calmed down now. You know what I mean? If that and that's your call to action, right? Immediately. So in addition to that, just like the phone script, we always verify something. There's something to verify: your address, usually your birth date, right? Or if you have a certain type of lead, like I'm working final expense leads, a lot of them are veterans, a lot of them are nurses, a lot of them are truckers. If you have that bit of information, that's your sounding board. That's your leap. You're able to leap in using that. So if you're serving in the armed forces, I'd say, okay, Trey, look like you're in the Marines. Oh my God, how many years? So I literally try to build out action steps into a bullet pointed thing. Like, okay, so it's going to be, you're a firefighter. Okay, how many years? You're a teacher. How many years? Okay, and then I try to take a minute, 1 minute, to not five, because once you get to that point of conversationalism where you're at the 5 minute mark, the 10 minute mark, they basically have complete control of the conversation. And we're trying to avoid that. They're going to start telling you, oh, well, my daughter's moving back. She's bringing her boyfriend and her dog. And I hate the boyfriend. And I've got to make their car payments. And you know what, Trey? I just don't think we can afford this right now. How do you know? I didn't even show you anything. It's free. Oh, okay, free. No, it's not free. But you know what I mean? I mean, they already talked themselves
Yeah.
out of it. You know? So I'm really big on trying to build a quick rapport. And for me, it's always been industry. What do you do for work? Or what did you used to do? Trey, what do you do for work? Oh, I'm retired. What'd you do before? I was in the Marines. How many years? Oh, wow. How many years you served? 20. Oh, what a career. And I'm, intentional because I am very interested. In hindsight, after helping so many families, man, that's what really, that's what really floats my boat. You know what I mean? Thank God I make money doing it. I know it's so important and people die. I know that. But the thing that really gets my attention every day is that I love talking to these people. It's so interesting.
Yeah.
Here, I have some recent sales. Let's take a quick look. Okay. Uh, I talked to this guy today. I helped this gentleman today. He's from Georgia. I was like, hey, you're from Georgia. How's the weather over there? He's like, it's cold and it's rainy. I was like, okay, that's my go-to. I'm in. You know what I mean? And then we started talking. I was like, so what do you do? I'm retired. And we started talking. Turns out he the first thing he says to me is, I'm talking about, hey, this is my life insurance to take care of your final expenses. Something happens to you. He goes, I ain't buying nothing for nobody. He like straight up like shut me out. He's like, I ain't buying nothing for nobody. I was like, yeah, yeah, I understand. But if something were to happen to you, who's going to be responsible? So I try to get up in there. Who's going to be responsible? Oh, my brother. What's his name? Daryl. We just started talking. So I was like, oh, you live nearby? He goes, yeah, I live on his property. And then I just, slowly started to get him out of that box. Because, people that fill out forms are people that fill out forms. They fill out forms all day. They're clicking on stuff all day. They're clickers, right? This internet's got you pegged. They know that you're looking for information on life insurance, on a used car, and they'll just constantly like inundate you with ads. So this guy's probably been called like 15 times already. He's probably already gotten 3 or 4 presentations, you know, but we have to try to get in below the surface and into what makes them special, and in the end, evolving that and having them feel special is the most important thing. It's more about being interested than interesting. It's not about me, it's about them. How can I make them feel special? Because they truly want to know what makes them tick. And in the end, honestly, it's more like an homage to these people. I'm paying respect to these people and their lives. This is like your life. You know what I mean? We're here to celebrate you and your life by preparing for what's next, and making sure you don't leave a burden to your family. But in the meantime, let's first put the spotlight on you and say, "Hey, thanks for what you do. You're you got something going on that's special." And this guy was like irate to begin with. He's like, "I ain't buying nothing for nobody." But then slowly I started asking him. I was like, "Hey, so, what, Somehow we got into the fact that he lives on it. Yeah, that's what it was. It was his brother Daryl, right? And then his brother, and I said, "Well, does he live nearby? Does he live close by?" He goes, "I live on his property." And then he started talking about, yeah, I've got this pond out here. That's what I do. I'm going to be out at the pond. I'm like, a pond? He's like, yeah, we go fishing in the pond. I'm like, and then I stopped right there. I was like, you have a pond on your property and you have fish in the pond. Yeah, it's a fishing pond. I'm like, and you have fish in there? He's like, yeah. I'm like, and you go fishing in there? He goes, yeah. I was like, and you go fishing in this pond and you catch the fish and you eat the fish. He says, yeah, I bathe in there too. I'm like, what? Yeah, most of the time I take my showers in there. I'm like, what? You? And then I was like, I stopped everything. I was like, you have a pond with a dock outside your back door, and you sit there every day and you go fishing in there, and you're fishing there, and you catch these fish and you eat these fish. He's like, yes. I'm like, and you go in there and you jump off this dock into the pond and you go swimming in there and you bathe yourself in there. He's like, yes. I like, oh my God. Ain't that America the beautiful? Man, we don't do nothing like that over here. He's like, well, let me tell you, son. And this is Georgia. Yeah, and this is like something I can't. I was like, and I said, that sounds like Huckleberry Finn, man. That kind of stuff. I've read about that stuff in books, but I've never seen it. We ain't nothing like that. You'd be lucky to catch a fish in the ocean right here, and if you did, you probably wouldn't want to eat it. I was, but I was really excited, to learn that, you know,
Right.
and that's what got us to link up. You know, another guy,
Yeah.
this other guy, he's a Navy SEAL, uh, and then he started telling me, I was like, "Hey, you married?" He goes, "Yeah." Like, how you been married? He's like, 40 years. I'm like, "Get out of here! Tell me about that." So he just started telling me, "Oh, you want to hear a story?" I was like, "Yeah, I do. You want to hear? Oh, you know how I met my wife?" He's like, "Okay, tell me." He's like, "I was with some guys. We were all in our full uniform. We were in Chicago, of all places, and some 6'3" guy was getting real uppity at the counter lady about his flight. So he took a swing at her, and he missed her, and he hit this little 5 foot tall little girl in back or beside her, and he hit her. And I was dismayed. And I told him, "Hey, buddy, you better slow it down." And he didn't listen. He took another swing, and then I just called out my brothers, and all these Navy SEALs came out and they pegged him on the floor. Turns out this little 5 foot tall young lady was grateful to the Navy SEALs who just happened to be standing in line like that, beat the crap out of this dude and sent him to wherever he needed to be. And it just coincidentally, she was staying at the same hotel. What a coincidence. So they dropped her off, and then he got up the courage to ask her, "Hey, uh, could we have breakfast tomorrow?" She's like, "Yeah, sure. Yeah, sure." So somehow it evolved into a romance, and they were dating for 6 months, long distance, because he was overseas. They started a long distance relationship for 6 months. And he's just telling me the story. And I let it ride a little bit, and he kept telling me. And he goes, and the funny thing is, we didn't realize till 6 months later, and it wasn't us, it was her mother who realized that now she's 26, but when she was in high school, she was sending care packages to their platoon while they were overseas. And he would write back to her, and they actually have his letters and his pictures and the platoon's pictures in her scrapbook from like 8 years, whatever, how many years prior, you know?
Wow.
I mean, you know,
That's unbelievable.
that's crazy stuff, right?
Yeah, it really is. And okay, just so you guys can recognize this, because people are listening to this going, I don't find that stuff out on my final expense appointments. Exactly. That's why you don't close as much as Jack. That's what he's trying to say to you. Because you get into this mode of like just making it super transactional and just talking. And if you can get other people to talk, because I think we've all had the if you ran in home, you've had the scenario where you sit down with a 78-year-old and you let them talk for 45 minutes and never get a word in, and then they're like, "Oh, life insurance, I thought this was solar," and they make you leave.
Mm-hmm.
Like Jack's saying, don't get to that point, but allow them to talk. Like that's
Mm-hmm.
a huge part of it, right, Jack? I mean,
Mm-hmm.
that's I think that's the difference because we all get so wrapped up into like financial inventory and objection handling and setting the table, but rapport is super important. What's the second most important thing, do you think, for the telesale?
Great. I mean, like any sales, resources, leads, right?
Yeah,
So we had actual guidelines before. Believe it, I don't want to freak everybody out, but I mean, in the old days, it was like, spend $1,000 a week. And if you're spending $300 a week, now you can come up with a budget. You have to do what you have to do. Everybody's got their own circumstances, right? Some people have more time than money. Some people have more money than time, and we have to work our way to it, right? To get to the point of where you have enough leads. But I think the thing I had to pay attention to, and I think the thing that really helped me get off the floor was a lot of these learning curves. I mean, I came from a place where there were not enough leads. I mean, and I'm not talking not enough leads for the first 3 months. I'm talking about years of life insurance sales with not enough leads. And we were like desperate, and the lead quality was very, very low. And we would literally door knock every single one. So sometimes you go through these hardships, and it helps you to value something, greater. So knowing the value of leads is very important. So how do you get to that point of fruition? If I love Andrew Taylor's example because he was working a minimum wage job, and he was 18 years old when he started. And when I met him, he was 20 years old, and he's already doing multiple six figures. And that's what got my attention. I was already a middle-aged guy that had to reinvent myself like 5 times already and still looking for a job. And you get this kid straight out of high school working in a grocery store and is able to matriculate multiple six figures. He didn't have a budget to buy leads. He did not. So, this kind of transparency was big. You know, the prudency. You got a little. You gotta have some some brains and to think. Like, hey, how important is it to get to duplicating what all these other people around the country are doing, right? And if you think people that are doing multiple six figures are spending $500 a week, no. Now, I can't even fathom I couldn't even fathom when I was new. How do you spend $1,000? I wasn't even close to that. I know Stephen Yee, he was like taking loans out. You know what I mean? I remember that. But
yeah,
everybody's got their own way. But one thing I'll share with you is number one, take a step back and actually do some homework. I mean, don't ponder it, but every single week you got a TNL, you got a call, and these people will tell you. They will tell you exactly what their action steps are. I get up at 5 in the morning. I go exercise. I get my mind right. I do my self reflection. And then I buy this many leads. They'll tell you exactly what did. I bought this many leads. I spent this much money, and I spent this much time on the phone. So what I'm aiming at is understand where you want to be, what it's going to take, and then know when to double down. I think that's a very instrumental thing. I have many agents that work with me that have actually very quickly and very early on experienced profitability. They have experienced profitability. But many of us, after a month, 3 months, 5 months, 6 months. You get trapped in that zone where, yes, I'm spending XYZ when I'm supposed to. We measure it weekly. Every single week, I'm spending this much. And I have that many appointments and I'm closing this many sales. But if you break it down, right, and I help 12 families a month, and I'm spending, you know, a third of that to get there, right? And I have chargebacks that equate to 20, 30%, depending on the month, right? Then the actual take home pay is not very good. Your net profit is not very good. And that can bring you diminishing returns in so many ways, in your self-confidence, you know, if you don't have traditionally 30 appointments a week, you will not take advantage of all the synergies that come with having a full schedule. And if you're on the telephone, it's even more than that. 50, 60 points. If you don't have 50, 60, I mean, let's be real. You want to make multiple six figures? So let's talk about that. If you don't have 50, 60 appointments a week, you don't have the ammunition that it's going to take. And then not just you won't make the money, but you will not take advantage of the synergies that come. What do you mean? Well, if I have a full appointment schedule, I have less time to think and worry and wonder. If I don't have enough appointments, I'm going to get no-showed. I'm going to have 6 appointments a day and get no-showed anywhere from 3 to 5 times a day. And I'm going to be left with 1 or 2 appointments and a 5-hour gap in between what I call a day. And I've only talked to somebody in the morning and I talked to somebody at 3 p.m. and all that interim period, I'm like sweating bullets. It's
Yep.
kind of like a restaurant. If you go into a restaurant and it's empty and the food's no good, then the the staff, they get very frustrated. They start eating the profits and throwing food at you, having food fights, and then they're, nobody wants to eat here. This place sucks. I suck. You know, that's you. It's a
Right.
lot of it's in your mind. And you have to the synergy that comes from having enough appointments and helping a person or two or three a day is immeasurable for your confidence level. And this is the synergies. 1 plus 1 is not 2. Hopefully, synergy means 1 plus 1 should be more than 2. And you can escalate upwards or you can de-escalate downwards very quickly. So having those appointments is very key. That's why. So we talk about. I refer to it as doubling down. So this is something I try to share with people. If you're at that point where you're helping 5 families a month, or 7 families a month, or 10 families a month, how do you get to the point where you're helping 20 families a month, 30 families a month? Well, one thing that you can control, one of the 3 things you can control is your resources, is your leads. So how do you come out and double down? Well, the first thing you have to do is realize, in my opinion, the first stage of comfort is profitability. And it doesn't have to be like I'm not profitable, like I'm winning, like I have like we said, you can still be profitable, but you have not a big net take home, right?
Right.
But that's when it's time to double down. Not most people, they'll either continue on that trajectory or they'll have a bad week and they'll lower the amount of their spend. At that point, when you experience profitability, is when it's immediately time. This is my opinion. When it's immediately time to double down, because then you double your opportunity. And in fact, the synergy that comes is you more than double your opportunity. Andrew and I, we used to have talks about this, and it's kind of like we notice, your average sale in America is $83 a month. Now with inflation, maybe it's even a little bit higher, especially in big cities like in states like California. Maybe it's $100 a month. My average sale is higher than that, right? So, but how often do you do a $300 sale or a husband and wife that adds up to $350? Not every single sale, no. But you can kind of imagine that every fifth sale is going to be bigger than your average. That's a fair statement. We've concluded, right? So every fifth sale is going to be bigger than your average $83 a month. And that's something that further synergizes your ability to make money. What do you mean? Well, kind of like the same thing. You got to be in it to win it. When we talk about investing, I don't gamble. I think it's a fun little sport, but maybe if I'm with my wife, we go to Vegas, I'll blow 100, $200. But I'm not I don't gamble per se, but I know how to play a slot machine. And if anybody knows how to play a slot machine, everybody that knows how to play a slot machine understands that when it's time to put a quarter, you can put 1 quarter in, you can put 2 quarters in, 3 quarters, 5 quarters, etc. You want a max bet. Anybody that knows how to play a slot machine understands that you need a max bet. Anybody that knows how to play blackjack and understands the odds, now, less people may know this, but when you get two of the same card, you got to split, and then we got to double down, right? So what I'm trying to say is you got to maximize the opportunity, and every fifth sale could be a bigger one. So that's along the lines of that concept, you know. So if
Yeah.
you double down, you have not just the ability to double, but because you have every fifth sale, the possibility to sell more and a husband and wife, and maybe do a rollover and do a cross sale and sell the auntie, that even furthers your chances of getting more clients.
Right. Yeah, I remember a conversation with you about this years ago, and it was like, I think I was working full time with Andrew in his office, and I think I was probably running 7 to 10 appointments a week, part time, that I was actually getting to sit on. And I remember you explaining to me, hey, if you can get it to, and I was writing, 10, 12, 14, whatever it was. And I was like, so to write 30, do I need to sit on, you know, 20 appointments a week? And you were like, and I think in order to do that, I would have to have run 30 or whatever. And I was part time. And you were like, no, like there's this synergy thing. If you could just do 5 more appointments a week, like just 5 more appointments a week, you'll get this benefit of these different synergies. And so I think the trap that people fall into is they try to quantify it. Like if I'm doing this and I double it, it'll double. No, if you double it, it'll more than double
Yeah,
every time.
yeah,
So that's great advice, Jack. Really great advice. So for the person doing telesales,
mm,
dialing 3 hours a day, if you dial 6 hours a day, you're not going to double your production. You'll more than double your production because the
yeah.
synergy's on your side.
Because you get better at it.
Yep.
You're not scared of
And
it. You know,
yep.
you're
So
more
quick,
efficient
let
when you
less
do it.
time in between the repetition.
Yep, that's it.
You know.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, I didn't mean to cut you off. What else were you saying, Jack?
No, I I I I I think it's really important. Like I was listening uh to someone who said the other day, uh having your first 100 appointments, right? You want to get through your first 100 appointments. And along the same lines, the faster you get in front of more people, the more you're going to learn from the the no sales or the charge. You're gonna learn something like, oh, I should have said this. Or when she said, hey, I need to think about it, I probably could have said, hey, the way the program works is we're going to, my job is to make sure, see if we can get you approved today. That's all we can do today. You want, and then or maybe I should have prefaced it by saying, hey, here's what we're going to do today. I'm going to show you some things and we're going to ask you some health questions. And then and then we're going to see if we can get you approved. So you're going to understand the moving parts of a presentation better. And then you're going to get more confidence, get more people to see, less downtime, and all these things are interrelated. And plus, you make more sales.
No doubt.
Yeah, yeah.
So, from a standpoint of building value on the phone,
Mm,
um, I heard it said a long time ago, like you don't want to give people prices until you know they're going to buy it. Like,
I love
how do
that.
you how do you navigate that?
Mm, mm. Well, I think building the why is important. I never took enough time to really to get into the why. Because all of this stuff for me, like everyone else, is a learning curve. And I think I had to realize I was getting so many, I need to think about it. I needed, I'm not interested so many times that I got to the point where I was like, I'm just right there at the precipice, but I haven't been able to cross over into where people actually want to do business with me. You know what I mean? So, um, it was just really key for me to take the time to um, build the why. So what I talked about that guy today with the brother, you know, I try to understand who's going to be responsible. So if something happens to you, of course, people are married, husband and wife, right? I like to paint that picture and understand. But then many times, if you're dealing with sometimes seniors or final expense, or in many situations they're single. So what I'd like to do is better evolve the why. and say, hey, a couple ways you can say, hey, Trey, um, many of the families that I help, they've actually filled out this form for a reason. You know, um, has someone, have you experienced that someone passed away? You know, understanding that people fill out these forms for a reason, and then letting them start talking about. Have you ever had something like that happen to you where, did your family have insurance? No, they never had any insurance. Okay. And when they passed away, was it challenging? Yes. You can provoke these thoughts, because it's an emotional sale. We're dealing in intangibles, right? You're never going to feel it and touch it. You're never going to use it yourself. You're something, that you're going to leave on to somebody else. So understanding the why is important. I'll say, okay, um, Johnny, if something happens to you, who are you going to leave it to? Who's your beneficiary? Oh, it's my daughter. Okay, great. Where does she live? Oh, she lives in Miami Beach. Okay, great. What does she do? She works at CVS. Okay. And she married, single? Well, she's a single mom. Oh, how many grandkids do you have? Oh, we have two. Oh, you must be so proud. So let me get this straight, Johnny. If something happens to you, your daughter, Caroline, is going to have to take time off of work, right? Get the kids out of school, right? Get some airfare and get on over here to Colorado, find a place to put up, and then lay you to rest. After that, we're going to have to liquidate everything in here, right? And you want to make sure that if you get something in place so that she doesn't have to come out of pocket for all that. Is that right? Right. So a little bit of trial close and try to really understand the moving parts of what it's going to take to, you know, cover the expenses that come with my passing. You know,
Mm,
you know.
good. So one of the things I you just shared with me recently is how you present the price.
Mm.
Could you go over that?
Me? Yeah. Um, I think a lot of people are very comfortable sharing three levels of coverage. And that's the traditional way, and I like that too. That way it gives them some options. It's not as high or low. Me, I've diverged from that, and and there's whatever makes you comfortable. But I think the most important thing when showing a price is that you're on your toes. So if I'm quoting America and I'm quoting EU Premier, I've got the quotation in my hand, and it's in my hand, open, ready to go. So I'd be like, okay, Trey, here's 10,000, and I have to be able to quickly show 8 or show 12 or show 15 or show 20. So it's got to be open. In my opinion, I'm ready to rock, you know? So I'll say, hey, Trey, and the way I like to posture, I say, hey, most importantly, this is something that has to meet your needs and your budget. I don't know what your budget is. I'm just going to show you something. And let's take a look. And I'll say, hey, look, here we go. It's real simple. If I can get you approved, it's 12,000. If approved, and I say if approved. I'm trying to make it conditional. Like you're not there yet. Right? And if it's approved, it's effective day one, and it's good forever. The price will never go up, and it's $76. And we can look at less, or we can look at more. That's the way I like to do it. I really break it down, and I enunciate, and I slow down. And we can look at less or we can look at more. I want to make it crystal, crystal clear. And me, I'm trying to show people that are something like 80 bucks or 100 bucks always. That's me. I don't usually shoot too low. And unless there's a value proposition where it's going to cost 200 bucks, then I usually don't start off with 200 bucks. Me. Now, in other situations where there's a lot more financial analysis going on, like it's a mortgage sale, and the guy's mortgage is, you know, uh, $500,000, and I've already gone through and I understand that their income levels are such and such, and that there's a husband and wife situation, and that their joint family income is quite good. Then 200 bucks, no problem, especially if I bring value in the form of a cashback option or something like that, right? But
Yeah,
when dealing with seniors, which is what I'm doing a lot nowadays, dealing with seniors and its final expense, I think, 80 bucks, 100 bucks, is tangible for anybody that wants to have that conversation. I try not to undercut too much. I try not to undercut too much, you know, but I do make sure that when I show the price, that immediately I'm like, and we can look at less or we can look at more, you know.
yeah.
That's me.
So my last few sales have come from that. It's really interesting. A couple of them were like, "Yeah, let's look at more,"
Yeah.
and then I was just like, well, dang, they just agreed.
You got
Like,
that one
if
the
any,
other day when
if
we were
anybody
together for
goes
two fifty
more,
nine a month, huh?
yeah, that was crazy.
That was crazy.
Because initially it was like 175, and he was
Yeah.
like, let's look at some more. And so I got him for 265, And I was like, wow, that's amazing how that works. So
What had you start at 175? Because that's the dude was over 70 years old, right?
yeah, and it was 15,000. And I just thought that was a good place to start because he was talking about burying his, I can't remember who he said he buried, but he said it cost about 15,000. So he knew that that was what he was looking for. So I showed him that. I just started there and I was
I
like,
love
we
it.
can look at less or we can look at more.
I love it.
And he goes, let's look at some more. And so it ended up being 22 or whatever it was, 23.
That's outstanding.
So,
Yeah. I think,
yep,
that right there, understanding, having this conversation where you're just, it's okay to talk openly, and not just about who, first things you want to make them talk about themselves so with, they understand, we're just, and you're very intentional about it. I'm not trying to kiss your ass. I'm trying to get to know who you are. And people are realistic. They're not stupid. They know when you're just trying to build rapport for the sake of building rapport. You know what I mean? But then when you get beyond that, we could just talk turkey. Then you actually pointed out that they had actually just buried somebody, and that they went through that experience, and that they spent that amount of money, on 15,000. That they had experience with that. So you were feeling good about it. You shot.
yep, it worked.
And it did. I mean, I'll be perfectly transparent with you. I mean, I'd love to. That's one of the synergies that come from having these kind of open conversations, where if you posture it right, you're not going to freak them out, and I'm not trying to freak you out, and I'm your advocate. You know what I
Yep,
mean? Because if you think I'm trying to steal your money, or you think I'm on a identity theft, or if you think I'm being heavy-handed on the price, then you're not definitely not going to work with me. But you got to the point in that conversation where $175 is cool as a starting point.
yep.
That's beyond and beyond most.
Well, when I don't sell it, and I mean, I think this is a good way to wrap it up. So when I don't sell it, it's usually because I rush, I give up control, and I just get to the price, and I don't spend the time on the rapport. Spending the time on the rapport, like you said, is huge. Having enough leads is huge because you get the people that aren't going to buy it anyway. So you need to be able to move on real fast
Yeah,
rather than, that's where a lot of the frustration comes from in this thing is like you're twisting somebody's arm that's untwistable
yeah,
because you don't have anyone else to talk to. And it's
exactly,
freaking discouraging. But when you got a bunch of people to talk to, it's way easier because you're just like, oh, he wasn't going to buy from anybody anyway. And two appointments later, you already forgot about that guy. So
no, no,
so that's really huge. And then digging into the why, what it looks like if they don't do it, letting them talk about it, and being genuinely interested. When it comes to the price, even if you overshoot a little bit, they're comfortable telling you, no, that's out of the budget. Let's move it down, let's move it up.
yeah,
And then the next step is, you could be comfortable with the price and you can understand it, but the insurance company still has to say yes. So let's keep our fingers crossed and see what they say, and they move forward. So, well, I could keep you on here for 2 hours, Jack. This has been awesome, but I
thank you,
don't want to
Trey.
waste your whole day. I appreciate you
No,
jumping on with us, and
my
we'll
pleasure.
definitely do a round two. If you guys enjoyed this with Jack, drop a one in the comments, please. There we go. Good. Yes, I loved it. It was awesome. All right, perfect. Oh, look at that. Oh, hi, Sheila Day. Look at that. Hey, we
Thanks,
got to get Sheila
guys.
Day on one of these.
Hi,
Um,
Sheila.
yeah, Sheila's great. You got to get Sheila on one of your calls.
Oh, please.
Sheila's my favorite. All right. Well, you guys make it a great week, and we'll talk to you soon. Jack, thanks so much for jumping on.